And you now have, well, if I did this, you would know right away that it couldn't be African music. Oigan de nosotros el cantar maravilloso. Why? Because it's Spanish, right? So right away, the language is Spanish, so by definition, it's got to be a Creole form. It is call and response. Eventually, after you sing verses, you end up with a call and response. Guido, Guido, mama, Guido me llama, caballero la rumba buena. Guido me llama, Guido, Guido, mama, Guido me llama, escucha el quinto, escucha el bambo. Guido me llama, Guido, Guido, mama, Guido me llama. What's European about it, aside from the language? What are the European elements that are creating this Creole form? Well, in all the African drumming forms, the lowest drum is the solo drum. And in rumba, the highest drum is. And in European music, who generally carries the melody? Who's the lead voice? Soprano. High. So we see that switch. Secondly, language. Third of all, you mentioned decima. The rumbas are traditionally based on the Spanish poetic forms, 10 lines, known as decimas. And the other thing, though, really important, is that nasal quality to the voice and the tonalities, the microtonal tonalities that if you listen to flamenco, you go, oh man, I'm listening to rumba. This is straight up Gitano. Now, we don't have time tonight to talk about the musical history of Spain, but clearly there's African, Islamic influence, huge, but that comes to Cuba. Saldiguera, for example, who was one of the original singers for what is today, a group known today as Los Muñequitos de Matanzas, but originally known as the Guaguancó Matancero. The original singer for that group, Saldiguera, says, oh, everybody thinks that, you know, rumba's from Africa, but my father came from Spain, and I learned all my rumba from him. And he was the one with the, if you listen to the old Guaguancó Matancero, he's the one with this voice. Ani na na na, na na. And then the harmonies that they sing is tritone and microtonal stuff, definitely European. So you have, now you get into the mid-19th century, you've got rumba going on, Creole. Then you start to have danzon going on with European instruments, originally the woodwinds, but then the violins and the flute and the bass and the piano, only they're playing clave-based rhythms. African. Then you get to the turn of the century and you get to possibly the most important form of Creole music today, and that would be son. Son. It looks like sun, but it's son. Son is salsa. What New Orleans jazz is to bebop, son is to salsa. And son developed around the turn of the century based on guitars. Again, the decima. Originally a jug or a marimbola. Do we know what a marimbola is? The big, it's like a huge thumb piano. You sit on it. It's so big that you actually sit on it and you pluck the, what do you call them? Tines, whatever.
Would that be similar to the sanza?
Yeah. But so big that also, in addition to playing bass, like a cajon or a box, you can also, they would play all kinds of like little quinto little things and bottom rumba parts and all this other stuff while they're playing the bass. So very African in that sense, that a lot of one instrument doing a lot of things. Regular guitars, 6-string guitars, a tres guitar, which is like a 12-string, but with 3 strings instead of 6, or however you want to think of that. The jug or the marimbola, voices, singing harmonies, and and maraca, clave, and not rumba clave, but son clave, and bongo. A completely Cuban instrument. Doesn't exist in Africa, doesn't exist in Spain. This is a Cuban instrument. And now think about it here, kids, because remember, it's acoustic. It's an acoustic guitar, right? So this is going to drown it out, right? So logical that you would create an instrument that's small enough to not drown out the other instruments. So the original technique for playing bongo is with your fingertips. Right? Because otherwise, guitar players can't hear themselves. When you go to hear a salsa orchestra today, a 14-piece band with 6 horns, an electric bass, electric piano, conga drums, timbal, 3/4 singers, and the sound guy says, "Oh, bongos, they cut. You won't need a mic." You try to play this instrument for more than 30 seconds in a 14-piece electric band. And, email me what happened to your hands. I can't do it. Now, there are guys who do, obviously. There are bongoceros in salsa bands. That's their gig. How in the world they do it, I don't know. Because I play one night bongo in a salsa band, and at the end of the night, I am dying. Because now you have to play with the whole hand. But this does not compete with a 125-watt amplifier that some keyboard player is playing out of. So I don't get it. But they're great players who can do it. I'm not one of them. Don't ask me how to do it. I don't know. My friend Carl Pedazo, who's the timbal player in Santana, is a brilliant bongo player, and he can get enough sound out of one of these things to knock the door down. Ask Carl. Don't ask me. I don't know. But I know that traditionally, this was created to be played like that. I can do that. I can go to a recording studio and do it, because you put a couple of mics under there and turn it up, and I can sound like $1 million. But I cannot compete live. All right.
Question.
Yeah.
Asking again, when you consider the fact that the Moors were in Spain for 700 years and probably bought Dumbek-type finger-played instruments, how much impact do you think that might have had on the development or the playing style of the bongo?
Probably quite a bit. Exactly how much, I have no idea.
Okay.
It would be logical to say a lot. How much, I don't know. But certainly, that's logical, especially since son was developed in the eastern part of Cuba by guajiros, by, quote-unquote peasants, farmers, who were, pardon me?
Campesinos.
Yeah, campesinos. And they were, by that time, by the turn of the century, you're starting to see a lot of mixed blood, black and white. And so, totally logical. That's perfectly reasonable. I don't know how much.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I'd like to just throw another thought that I've had about that, which is, in terms of the sound, the bongos always remind me of the little baton, the little Yoruba baton that they don't play in Cuba in the baton song.
Tooting.
Yeah, play with the bilala.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a really similar sound to
Yeah.
me, high and dry
Yeah.
and fast.
Yeah. I mean, all of these, I'm not a historian of the bongo. So, perfectly reasonable. But remember, the son was not fast. I mean, the drum that you're referring to plays, in the Baton Nigerian ensemble plays those really fast. And son is, la gente pidan para gozar, tumba y bongo. La gente pidan para gozar, tumba you know, there wasn't, and the licks aren't, you know, like they are today, 300,000 miles an hour. Giovanni wasn't alive then. You know, the licks were, you know, repicao, you know, were really, you know, in that old put it right in the cut style. So I don't know if that analogy necessarily works.
Right. That's just a thought I've had trying to, you know, puzzle out the sound. From
Yeah, that I...
You know, the other thing that occurs to me is just the fact that it's an easier drum to make. You know, that,
Well, sure.
You know, you see that all over the
Sure.
world, right?
And remember, but also tack. I mean, obviously, tack heads originally, you know, tuned with heat. You know, hardware is a novel innovation. All right, so you've got the song going on. And what happens is that by the 30s, the son players, the danzon was the national dance rhythm style of Cuba. Everybody danced danzon. But by the 20s and the 30s, the danzon is sounding really tired to most Cubans because there's yeah, well, and I don't mean this funny, but there's very little, there's no black element in it, and the Cubans want to dance. So there's no funk. There's no funk. It's through composed, the end of the melody, you play that paseo, and you're done. And the son, at the end of the verses, now has the ostinato call and response in the vocals, and the guitars start playing doom kum ding gong kum dum kum ding gong kum dum kum dum ding gong kum dum kum. And you know, Saturday night, moms and pops are out stepping. And the danzon groups are not working. Now, the son groups develop into conjuntos. Conjunto really just means group. But in this case, it defines an entire style. By the way, what time is it?
8:20.
Good. Can I go till 9 without boring everybody to tears? If we shoot.
No way.
But I mean, if we shoot, he's bored already. He's leaving. Not only.
I gotta go check and make sure they didn't tow my car yet.
But
Are you done yet?
yeah. I'm looking for the check, though, man. I don't know what's up. Did Martin send the check? We'll shoot for 9 o'clock. Okay, that should give me time to finish, give time for questions, etc., etc. Oh yeah, conjunto just means group, but it really defines an entire instrumentation. In traditional Cuban music, if you see conjunto Spiro, you know what that instrumentation is without even going to hear the group. There's a bongo player in the group who, when the coro pregón comes, when the call and response comes in, picks up the cowbell, which we have right here in front of you right now. Picks up a cowbell. You have now added a conga player. So from the whole tradition of rumba and, you know, barrel-shaped drums with a head on it, that gets added to the ensemble. You have the maraca and the clave that's played by the singers. You now have an actual bass. You have piano. You have the tres guitar. You've got at least 2 and usually 3 trumpets. So you now have a trumpet section. And you have singers. So you take the son, which is kind of acoustic, and you jack up the instrumentation, and now you've got a full-on band. Now, everybody goes out to dance to the son bands, and the danzon guys are out of work. So along comes Cachao. Do we all know who Cachao is? Anybody not know who Cachao is? Okay. Cachao is a bass player who is still alive, lives in Miami, and Cachao, one of the seminal. Oh, by the way, if you need to know that the most important, if you had to pick one guy to know about for son, you need to know about Arsenio Rodriguez. That's pretty much the man. There are a lot of other men, but you got to pick one guy. Arsenio Rodriguez. Now, Cachao said, well, we need to work, and we are out of work.